Nearly every government on Earth is in debt. The United States owes $38 trillion. China, $14 trillion. Japan, $9 trillion. Germany, France, the United Kingdom, even oil-rich Saudi Arabia, all carry billions of dollars in debt. The total global debt now exceeds $315 trillion. That means the world owes more than 3 times everything it produces in a single year. But here's the interesting part. If everyone is in debt, who lent the money? Who is the creditor? The answer will surprise you. Because the truth is, no one. Or rather, everyone is both a debtor and a creditor at the same time. This is the greatest illusion in modern finance. And this illusion has been alive for over 300 years. The story begins in the late 1700s. Back then, money meant gold. A nation's power was measured by the gold it held. Wars were fought for gold. Empires rose and fell over it. But then, something changed. England had been fighting France for years, and its treasury was running dry. The king was out of gold, so how would he finance the war? Then, a revolutionary idea emerged. Why not borrow from wealthy and powerful merchants? But this wasn't a normal loan. It promised permanent interest payments, guaranteed by future tax revenue. And to manage this new arrangement, the Bank of England was created. This is how the modern debt system was born. Governments could now spend money they didn't yet have. Lenders received a piece of paper backed by the promise of the state. A paper that could be traded, bought, and sold. They called it a government bond. And these bonds suddenly became the most valuable assets in the world. France copied the idea. The Netherlands perfected it. The young United States used the same system to finance its independence. Debt was no longer a sign of failure. It became a sign of power. A government able to borrow was a government others trusted. Today, every dollar, euro, or yen in your pocket is actually a debt note. Central banks don't really print money, they create debt. When the Federal Reserve prints $1 trillion, it is actually buying $1 trillion worth of government bonds and creating digital money in return. Every unit of currency represents a debt. There's no such thing as debt-free money. That's why no one panics when the U.S. owes $38 trillion, because half of that debt is owed to itself. The Federal Reserve, American banks, pension funds, and insurance companies hold those bonds. U.S. citizens pay interest through taxes, which returns to their own retirement funds. The system is like a snake eating its own tail. When people think of foreign debt, the focus is always on China. Yes, China holds $800 billion in U.S. bonds, but that's only about 2% of the total. Japan holds more, around $1 trillion. Luxembourg, Belgium, and the UK all hold U.S. bonds. None of this means China controls America. In fact, China can't suddenly dump these bonds because their own reserves would lose value. Now let's get to the strange part. Japan lends to America. America lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing nations through the World Bank. Those developing countries reinvest their earnings into Western bonds, lending back to the advanced economies. Everyone owes everyone. Everyone holds everyone else's IOUs. It's a massive trust game, like players sitting at a poker table. Every chip borrowed from the player next to them. And the one rule: nobody stands up. Nobody asks for their money back. Because if one person stands, the system collapses. So how does this system stay alive? One word: confidence. As long as investors believe governments will pay interest, even if they never pay back the principal, The machine keeps running. Refinancing is the key, issuing new bonds to repay old ones. In essence, the debt is never meant to be paid off. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is official policy. The United States has no plan to repay $38 trillion. Japan could not repay its debt even in 250 years. It exceeds 250% of GDP. But no one is nervous, because no one expects repayment, only steady interest. Here's the paradox. If the U.S. suddenly paid off all its debt tomorrow, the world economy would collapse. Think about it. $38 trillion in U.S. bonds would vanish. But those bonds are the core assets of banks, pension funds, and insurance companies. They use these bonds as collateral to borrow money. Remove that collateral and lending freezes overnight. Worse, the supply of dollars would shrink dramatically. Because creating dollars requires buying bonds. No bonds, no dollars. Deflation would hit. Prices would crash. Businesses would fail. Unemployment would skyrocket. A deep economic crisis would begin. That's why governments constantly take on new debt instead of repaying old debt. It isn't madness. It is the system. Debt is the heartbeat of capitalism. Every pension, every mortgage, every financial transaction, all pulse with this debt cycle. When politicians claim, "We will balance the budget," they are either selling dreams or confessing they don't understand economics. The goal is not to eliminate debt. The goal is to keep it sustainable. But like every confidence game, this system is fragile. When confidence breaks, disaster follows. We've seen it. That's why governments constantly take on new debt instead of repaying old debt. It isn't madness. It is the system. Debt is the heartbeat of capitalism. Every pension, every mortgage, every financial transaction, all pulse with this debt cycle. When politicians claim we will balance the budget, they are either selling dreams or confessing they don't understand economics. The goal is not to eliminate debt. The goal is to keep it sustainable. But like every confidence game, this system is fragile. When confidence breaks, disaster follows. We've seen it. Greece in 2010, austerity, unemployment, chaos. Argentina, endless defaults and resets. Sri Lanka, no fuel, political collapse. Turkey, crisis under inflation. Pakistan, pleading with IMF Venezuela. Total breakdown. During crises, creditors suddenly become visible. The IMF, the World Bank. Rating agencies, anonymous bondholders with their hands at a nation's throat. But once the crisis passes, the cycle resumes, because there is no alternative. When people say we owe the debt to ourselves, that is only half true. Interest does not flow equally. Taxes come from the public. Interest flows upward to wealthy investors. Debt isn't just a transfer between nations. It is a transfer between social classes. This is why global inequality and global indebtedness rise together. The rich buy bonds. The poor pay their interest through taxes. The middle class pays taxes during working life, then earns bond payments at retirement, financing others while they work. Why does this matter? Because someday the engine might run out of fuel, when new borrowing can no longer keep up with past promises. That is when the question, who is the creditor, stops being abstract and becomes personal. Look down from the top of the global pyramid and you will see no single villain. China? No. Wall Street? No. The IMF? No. It's all of them and all of us. The financial system has turned debt into money itself. Governments issue it. Banks multiply it. Investors trade it. Citizens depend on it. The line between debtor and creditor has disappeared. Debt once meant slavery. Today it means balance. But if that balance breaks, if confidence is lost, the illusion ends, and we will remember what debt really is, a promise that cannot last forever. Right now, we are playing the biggest game on Earth, a $315 trillion trust game. The rule is simple. As long as everyone believes it will be repaid, no one actually has to repay it. The system stands on confidence. When confidence falls, numbers collapse, interest spikes, crises erupt, economies stop. What comes next? More debt, because that's the only escape. The system needs debt to grow. Debt needs confidence. Confidence needs endless promises. And the cycle continues. Maybe one day the system collapses. Maybe a new one rises. Maybe digital currencies rewrite everything. Maybe central bank digital money reshapes the game. Or maybe the system continues for another 100 years because it has survived every challenge so far. Never forget, money is an illusion. Debt is the foundation of that illusion. And we have chosen to live inside it. And because we cannot imagine the alternative. The system isn't perfect, but it works, at least for now. And in finance, for now, sometimes means forever. If this video gave you a new perspective, don't forget to subscribe, because where money, power, and history intersect, there's so much more to uncover.